Good morning. It is Saturday, the 29th of July, and I'm with our German friends, Dennis and Brenda and Lena Hoffman. We are in Luxembourg, on the verges of the Ardennes, in a town called Clervaux. And the next leg of the journey is all about culture and history. Upon arrival in Übach-Paulenberg, it was history that was brought to my attention, World War II history specifically. Memorials to the fallen and the remnants of Hitler's West Wall, with its dragon's teeth, are blocks away from Dennis and Brenda's home. In fact, Übach-Paulenberg is situated in the middle of one vast battlefield, the Battle of the Rhine, which closed the last 6 months of the war in the West. Not too far from Übach-Paulenberg are two infamous forests known in the story of the Second World War, the Hurtgenwald and the Ardennes. This is the Ardennes en route to Clervaux. Heavily forested with timbered ridges, it is cut with valleys that are dotted with pastures. The conifers and evergreens remind me of home. The Ardennes was the scene of America's longest and bloodiest battle of World War II. We're at the Chateau de Clervaux, and Dennis brought me here to show me the museum of the Battle of the Ardennes. So this is the museum for the Battle of the Ardennes during World War II. Let's check it out. This is where we're at in Clervaux. It looks like this is where the German offensive, the second offensive through the Ardennes, took place. The Battle of the Bulge was actually America's greatest test on the Western Front in World War II. It's the biggest battle that the Americans fought on the Western Front, and they suffered by far the most casualties here. This exhibit, it looks like there's just a bunch of rations that the armies used. And of course, cigarettes are very valuable to soldiers. More rations and mess kits. The armies. This soldier here was 15 years old. And that's his war ration book. Some of the German weapons. Down here would be the American ones. Here we have, I think this is a bar, Browning automatic rifle, MG42. I can't remember the name of this machine gun here.
Oh, nobody's smoking here.
I was gonna say, there's nobody smoking. No one is smoking, it's the dude that died on the ground, he was the one that's supposed to be smoking. The grandmother smokes.
The Germans were counting on the weather to hold out because they lacked the air power. And the bad weather would give them hopefully the time to capture Antwerp and cross the River Meuse. And Hitler could buy time.
Over amount of lashes and brows. Contract hash corned beef.
Hi, little one.
Så hej lille sådan. Hej lille.
That was really cool. I'm glad Dennis surprised me with that. And now we're going to go to a museum of castles here in Luxembourg. All right, this is the Luxembourg Museum of Fortresses and Castles. Dennis is our tour guide. He's pointing everything out for me.
Yeah, but we're telling him like there are always the marks for what castle it is.
La Rochette is that castle. I guess each of these models is a different fortress or castle you can see here in Luxembourg. As you can tell, it looks like it was historically this area has had a necessity to be fortified from foreign invaders. Are those coats of arms?
Yes, that's that's Brandenburg. What is that? Upselt. Upselt?
That one's pretty cool.
Yeah, that looks really cool.
It's a whole chest of coats of arms, probably for each baron or family who lived in each castle.
There's a big one.
This is a model of the city that we are in, Clervaux. And downstairs we saw the Museum of the Battle of the Bulge, and this is a scene during that attack. You can see.
Oh, no, there's the light on.
Must have been right at the spear point of the German offensive. Fortunately, they did not reach their war aims. You can see the hospital in there. All the soldiers, looks like a headquarters. Americans scrambling to turn the tide of the German offensive. Very detailed model. Dennis is teasing me. He's saying this is my castle. The reason why is because its coat of arms has ducks on it. We are going to check out the cathedral here in Clervaux. Just going to look at the facade of it on the outside. It is. So that's the castle we were just in that had the Museum of Castles and the Museum of the Battle of the Bulge. And there's Brenda. And here's the facade of this church. On the way to Trier, you can make a little side stop at the Luxembourg American Cemetery and Memorial. And here should be the graves of the war dead in the Battle of the Bulge. There are a little over 5,000 American war dead interred here. There's a plaque for the military operations in Western Europe. Here are the names of American servicemen who sleep in unknown graves. And here's a map of the Ardennes and the Rhineland campaigns, 1944. These are the comrades of our fathers, our grandfathers, and our great-grandfathers. Come to pay my respects. George S. Patton. Here's his gravesite. Says this cemetery was established in late December 1944. It was a temporary cemetery for casualties of the Battle of the Bulge. And by 1946, there were 8,400 soldiers buried here. But after the war, the next of kin, service members, were able to choose either repatriation to the United States or burial in one of the cemeteries that will be managed by the ABMC. Every service member buried in a permanent cemetery was given an appropriate service before being laid to rest permanently. Good morning. I'm in the Eifel region, Germany. We're in the little town of Monschau. In the autumn of 1944, during the Battle of the Rhine, my own grandfather, medical aidsman George Fullwider, saw action here at the 709th Tank Battalion. So this day is kind of following in his footsteps, just a really small portion of the great conflict that was the Second World War.
take Russ up here because we know.
There's some old castle walls right there.
Like even if you go higher, you can see a lot more.
Making our way up to one of the watchtowers. It's kind of connected in interconnecting set of towers around the main keep of the town. There's the coat of arms of this town, Monschau. This looks like it goes up that way. When you think about it, it really is just a perfect spot for a watchtower. A lot of deciduous trees, even though this reminds me of my home country. Even though George Fullwider was from South Dakota and not Washington. He moved to Washington later in his life after the war. There's more remnants of the tower right there.
Baby.
All right, buddy. Our journey in the Rhineland has brought us to Hurtgenwald. We are near the city of Wacht. There's a German military cemetery here. I'll go see in just a moment. And George Fullwider, medical aids man, 709th Tank Battalion, saw very intense action here during the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest. The cemetery at this location was erected on what was called Hill 470 during the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest. And a lot of heavy action took here between the Wehrmacht and the Allied forces. The Allies did not bury their dead on German soil. You have to go to Luxembourg or Holland to see the American cemeteries. And there are around 2,334 German soldiers buried in this plot. Very beautiful countryside in the Eifel region of Germany. I think next we're going to head into the actual town of Hurtgen. This is the Hurtgenwald, which is within the Eifel region of Germany. We did not immediately go into the town of Hurtgen. Instead, Dennis took us for a roundabout drive through the towns of Wassenack and Schmidt, which saw heavy fighting during the Hurtgen campaign. In Wassenack there is a museum to the battle, but we could only get a pamphlet and read the outside exhibits. It is only open 1 day a week. The Hurtgenwald is situated on a high plateau of timbered ridges, with valleys running down to the plains of the Ruhr and Rhine rivers. Dennis said it has bogs that swallow people alive. It is steep and very similar to the Ardennes. The terrain here favors the defense. The castle above Schmidt gives testament for the need to fortify the Hurtgenwald throughout history. After doing quite a bit of driving around the Hurtgenwald, Dennis has brought us to a second cemetery down here just outside the town of Hurtgen. Besides these two cemeteries and a museum, there's really no other indication that, a massive battle of World War II happened in any of these towns. They've all been rebuilt. Very nice. There's not a lot of plaques, as in other countries we went to where it's like in your face, like this was a great battle. Nothing like that here. And I guess that kind of just represents the German side of things and their culture. To them, the war happened, the Allies came, they won. The war was nothing to be proud of, and life has moved on. And there are around 3,000 grave sites here for German soldiers who perished during the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest, which I guess left a pretty negative mark on this part of the country. It took a while for people to return from some of the signs I'm reading and rebuild their lives. Before we left this particular cemetery, Dennis said that the most important grave was right here at the beginning. This is a plaque in memory of Lieutenant Frederick Langfeld. Here in the Hürtgen Forest on November 12th, 1944, Lieutenant Langfeld, a German officer, gave his life while trying to save the life of an American soldier lying severely wounded in the Wildschau, a minefield of... This guy was appealing for medical aid, and a German officer just risked and gave his life to save his. Placed at this site on October 7th, 1994, under the honor of the 22nd United States Infantry Society, World War II. Deeds, not words. And I hope to move forward and live my life. A lot more better deeds instead of just saying things after seeing all of these memorials. This morning we started up here close to Aachen. We came down to Monschau. It was a very beautiful town. And we've made our way back up this way to Wassenack. We went out to Schmidt. And now we're here just on the outskirts of Hürtgen. And we're gonna make our way back to where Dennis lives. Pretty much what we saw today was a lot of the battlefields of the Hurtgenwald. And here's a list of the books and resources that I used in the making of this video. This is Schlachtfeld, Rheinland, Das Ende des Kriegs zwischen Maas und Rhein, September 1944 bis Mars 1945 in Bilddokumenten. Don't know what much of that means because I'm not fluent in German, but it is pretty easy to read. This was a gift to me from Dennis Hoffman himself. He gave it to me for my birthday a couple years back. It was the inspiration for the title of this film, Schlachtfeld, Rhineland. And anytime I want to challenge my brain a little bit, I just open it and try and read the German. Some of it you can make out. This is Kampf in der Schlammigen Hohle von Hurtgen. And this is the chapter on the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest, all in German. When you turn the page here, right here is a picture of American forces in Übach-Paulenberg. Hitler's West Wall goes right through this town. There's a lot of memorials there dedicated to American forces crossing the border. The border with the Netherlands is right there, not too far from Dennis and Brenda's house, which is in Übach-Paulenberg, and where we spent a lot of our downtime when we were visiting them in Germany. This book here is the official history of the 709th Tank Battalion. It's called 331 Days. And from its origins to its decommissioning, this is about the bastard battalion, the 709th. And there's a lot in here, ton of information. It's very old, I have to be careful with it. But right here, it's a picture of my grandpa right there. Medical aidsman George L. Fullwider. There's quite a few pictures of him in this book. So got a lot of maps, and it has also the orders of the day back here, daily operations journals, casualty figures, awards, who got decorated. Used this book a lot, and I think I've read it probably 3 times now. It was really cool to go see just one segment of the story when we were in Germany. This book is called Snow and Steel, The Battle of the Bulge, 1944-1945 by Peter Caddick Adams. I purchased this at the museum in Clervaux. It's a thick one, okay? But it was very well researched. It's a very good read. I couldn't put it down once I started. And it tells the whole story of the Battle of the Bulge and the pre-stories leading up to it, all the commanders, every aspect of the Second Battle of the Ardennes is pretty much covered in this book. So it's one of many that I've read on the battle, but by far, probably the best ones thus far. I also purchased this book at the museum in Clervaux. I have not read it thoroughly, but it has a ton of maps and a ton of pictures and diagrams, which is just as good as reading, because you can read pictures too, and they give a wealth of information. And I can't wait to dive into this one, but I am going to use a map from it here in just a moment to lay out the Battle of the Bulge for you, so you can kind of get an idea of its scale. This is a notebook that belonged to my grandpa. He was really artistic and he liked to draw. I've used it now to make a map of the campaign in the Hürtgen Forest leading up to the Battle of the Bulge on December 16th, 1944. Okay. First thing to understand is the 709th Tank Battalion was composed of 4 companies of tanks and with a medical detachment, and the whole battalion itself was attached to numerous infantry divisions and armies throughout the Western Front campaign in World War II between June and the end of the war in April 1945. And they even served some occupation duty well into 1946. But this map here just covers a small time frame of the invasion of Germany and the Rhineland in the autumn of 1944 up to the winter of 1944. On November 19th, the 709th moved up from St. Vith through Malmedy to Eupen, Belgium. This is Belgium right here. And they crossed the border into Röttgen, went by way of Rot to Zweifel. They did all of this in one day. And then once they got here, they were attached to both the 4th Infantry Division and the 8th Infantry Division of the U.S. 9th Army, I believe under General Hodges. And then beginning on November 22nd, 1944, they moved into the Hürtgen Forest. And it was a big forest. The Hurtgenwald is this entire area right here. And they had to move in here and seize the Hürtgen Forest because it was high ground and they needed to get access and control of these reservoirs along the river Ruhr. And this river flows kind of like to the northwest, and it's the industrial heartland of Germany. So if the Germans were to blow these dams and flood the Ruhr, it would definitely keep the Allies from crossing over and slow them down. So it had to be taken. And as they advanced, they ran into heavily defended positions, thick minefields, 88 millimeter anti-tank guns, and turned into pretty much just a slugfest and a bloodbath. But on November the 28th, 1944, the 709th moved into Hürtgen, captured the town, and it was held in turn by the 121st Infantry Regiment. The 709th got this the Distinguished Unit Citation for this action between the 21st and the 28th of November 1944. So they were a decorated battalion. But that wasn't the end of the battle. They had to then capture all these towns within the Hürtgen Forest. And companies B, A, and D, so these 3 here, in support of the 8th Infantry Division, fought very fierce battles to capture Schmidt, Wassenack, and Hürtgen. Okay? And this, covering them on the northern flank here was the 4th Infantry Division with C Company attached. And they also captured the towns of Kleinhau and Borgheim. My grandpa always liked drinking Schmidt beer. I wonder if it had anything to do with his time around this city. The first cemetery we were at when we were at the Hürtgen Forest was here at Wassenack. Okay? And we also went to the cemetery here at Hürtgen. By December the 9th, A and C companies were detached from the 8th Infantry Division and the 4th Infantry Division, and they were moved south to Lammersdorf. When they were here, they were redeployed with the 78th Infantry Division of the 5th Corps. And here they took up a defensive line on this piece of high ground on the Simmerath-Kesternick Ridge. And they slowed up and fought against the 6th SS Panzer Division, which was led by Dietrich. And it was here that these companies of the 709th pretty much battled it out and held this high ground all the way up until the beginning of the Battle of the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge, which started in the early morning hours of December the 16th, 1944. But all that was down here to the south. So when I say in my video that my grandpa saw action in Monschau, it wasn't quite that accurate. They were actually protecting the high ground and the approaches to Monschau because they knew that the 6th SS Panzer was trying to slice through here past Eupen, try and capture Liege, a great fortress town, kind of like Verdun, which is up in this direction. And the 709th pretty much stayed here along this northern flank of the Bulge and held this defensive position until January the 25th, 1945, when they were moved all the way south to Alsace-Lorraine to take part in the Battle of the Colmar Pocket. The Battle of the Rhineland would not be complete without mentioning Cologne, right here along the River Rhine. It was bombed to a pulp during World War II by the Allies in several massive air raids. And we got a chance to go to Cologne the last 2 days we were in Germany to see the famous cathedral there. And we saw a lot of churches while we were in Cologne. Almost all of them were damaged during the war. But the great cathedral of Cologne held its ground and stood strong amid all the destruction. I did get a lot of footage of the inside of the church, but somehow it disappeared. So all I have is just a lot of bonus footage of our time on the outside of the Cathedral of Cologne. I'm going to refer now to 331 days. And when you look in here, okay, here's the map that I kind of just recreated on Grandpa's notebook of the Hürtgen Forest campaign. Very detailed map. But right here, here's a picture of Wassenack, Germany. And this looks very similar to where we were standing at the cemetery looking out over the village. I have a shot of it. I don't know if I'm saying something that's accurate at all or not, but this is the actual picture of it during the war. And when we were there, it was like nothing ever happened. The town was completely rebuilt. There was a museum to the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest there. And it was closed. It was only open 1 day a week. So if I ever go back, there's some hiking trails, and that museum looked really cool to go see. And if you keep turning the pages here, here's Kleinhau. Here's the destruction of the town of Kleinhau. Which is, here's some of the light tanks that were in the 709th. And here's a picture of Borgheim, which is another town in the Hürtgen Forest that the 709th helped support infantry in its capture. And then right here, that's Hürtgen. We didn't actually go into the town of Hürtgen. We were right on the outskirts. We went to the cemetery there. These are all the Army, Corps, and Division combat attachments of the 709th Tank Battalion between the 11th of July 1944 and the 7th of May 1945. Look at all these infantry divisions here and their symbols that 709th helped support in combat action. And then here's a map of the Great Ardennes Offensive in the winter of 1944. The Hürtgen Forest is a massive forest that covers this whole area. The previous map I just showed you was north of all of this. Here's Monschau. Can't really see it that well. And then the Hürtgen Forest is up here off of the page. And that's where the 709th, a couple companies of it, was in defensive positions during the winter of 1944. And they were battling attacks of the 6th SS Panzer Army. Okay? But most of the offensive was happening to the south of my grandfather's battalion. I begin my video here at the town of Clervaux. You can see how it's right in the center of the lines. Okay? We're pretty much right across the border from Germany in Luxembourg. And they were attacked on the opening night of the battle by the 2nd Panzer Division, the 26th Volksgrenadiers, and the Panzerlehr, all a part of the 47th Panzer Corps. The German objectives in their second offensive through the Ardennes was to drive a wedge of armor between the Allied armies, cross the River Meuse right here at Namur, and then drive and capture the channel port of Antwerp, giving them access to the sea, taking advantage of mistrust between the Allied armies at this time of the war, and hopefully Hitler could bide some time and turn all of his forces to the east and defeat the real threat from the Russians, as he saw. Okay. But none of that worked out as planned. They barely made it. They didn't even make it to the Meuse. Okay. This is as far as they penetrated. Okay. This was their line by the 23rd and 24th of December. They started their offensive on the 16th of December here, and that's as far as they made it. They put a lot of emphasis on the Panzer Corps up here to the north, and they weren't really so armored down here. And they should have flipped that around, because most of the easily attackable land was down here to the south. We're all aware of the famous 101st Airborne Division at Bastogne, which is right here. Okay, it's pretty much on a straight shoot on a road from Clervaux. So, and 101st held off and kept this massive road network open, or kept it out of the hands of the Germans. Their offensive stalled without gasoline and proper material. And they were counting on good weather too, as in bad weather. They needed winter conditions and overcast for their plan to work, because they didn't have any air cover. But on Christmas Day, I think the story goes, the skies cleared, crystal clear above, and a superior Allied air cover could wreak havoc on the German armor. The Bulge lasted. It stopped, at its high water mark, but then the Allies did a slow eating away at the edges of the Bulge. Patton came up from the south to counterattack and pushed it back to its original line, I think sometime by January, but I'm not too sure on the exact date. It's debatable on when the true date of the end of the Battle of the Bulge was. This is called the Cathedral of St. Gerion. Sounds like we can go into it. Has a lot of Romanesque architecture of the early going into like the late Middle Ages. I guess I'm expecting to see a suspended dome inside of that round nave. Just reading the plaque on the side of the church there. The central circular apse, the suspended dome, was built in the late 4th century AD, and pretty much construction and additions have been added on to this cathedral all the way up until modern times. Extensive damage during the Second World War. So I guess a lot of buildings around here have been rebuilt and remodeled to make them look like they used to. Let's see if we can go in it. The Kölner Dome is the tallest twin-spired cathedral in the world. Its facade strains your neck looking up at it. It is the largest Gothic cathedral in northern Europe. Construction began in 1248, but the cathedral is built on top of previous structures dating back to Roman times. Work on the Kölner Dome has never ended. It is a continuous work in progress. It always has scaffolding on it. During World War II air raids, the cathedral took 14 hits by bombs but remained standing over a flattened city. By far, the Kölner Dome is the most impressive enclosed space I have ever seen. With its Gothic architecture and vertical proportions, the mood you feel is 100% medieval. A stunning combination of light and space, akin to mountain scenery, but created by the talents of man.